the luster of wisdom. Learn from these facets of nature, though trampled on by all. Be firm in your adversity, like the earth itself. From these mountains which hold their mineral and other resources for the welfare of the world, learn that you must live for others and not for yourself. Like the wind, you must be able to pass through unhindered, all pervasive, touching everything, yet itself untouched. The sky is verily the shining paradigm of the yogin. You should be limpid, pure, purifying, pleasing, and refreshing like water, effulgent with the luster of wisdom, like the fire that reduces to ashes all impurity. Like the python, lie still and take only what comes to you. And when nothing comes, fast as the python does. Like the sea, deep and unfathomable, neither be swollen by what flows into you, nor be depleted by what is withdrawn from you. Like the bee, take in little by little, and from good and bad alike, extract the essence, even as the bee gathers honey.
Thank you so much, Mary.
Thank you.
And you read the part about being pure and purifying and pleasing. I thought of how appropriate it was for you to be reading that passage. Thank you so much. We're very glad and privileged to have joining with us today Tony Bonnici. Tony is a longtime friend to our family. He's a life coach and a business coach. So he's been very helpful for me along my path. He also was brought up as a Zen Buddhist. He exemplifies someone who has put in an enormous amount of effort along his different life endeavors, and also has learned how to find some balance in that effort, I would say. And so he's a really good proponent of this topic for the week called right effort, which is the 6th of the 8 steps of the Eightfold Path of Buddhism. So I give you Tony Bonnici.
Thank you, Renee. Thank you, Cliff, for having me. Very excited to be on this call together. And always like to start out with 3 breaths together. So if you could put down anything that you're holding, or if you feel that you could get in a little more comfort, I invite that right now. And that we take 3 breaths together. And as we take those 3 breaths, notice what's going on for you, what's going on in your thinking and what's going on in your body. So let's take 3 breaths slowly. Thank you. Always love to start the connection with the 3 breaths. And coming into right effort for me really gave me a chance to look at different ways that I've showed up, or what right effort meant for me. And so before I get into some of that, I'd be curious for yourself to take a couple breaths and reflect back when you experienced or recognized right effort in your life, whatever it means to you. That you can see that there was that event that took place, that you showed up. For myself, I remember standing at the altar with Amber and saying my vows, and recognizing that time of that way of my whole body being connected to it, to preparing for an athletic event. Like I really felt that right effort. So what is it for you when you recognize that you brought right effort, or what it means to you? And so as you recognize that, to see, do you still see the event in your mind? Can you still picture that event of right effort? And can you feel any sensations or recognize anything that happens to your body as you feel that sense of right effort? And I know for myself, in the Soto Zen tradition, being raised where the idea of right effort, the thought of right effort, was less talked about than the embodiment and the practice of what right effort was. And so for me, as I looked back and I was like, oh, where did I really experience right effort? What was that like to be in right effort? And what I noticed is that I wanted to go to the end event, or the end piece that was taking place of the thing that I wanted to achieve or accomplish. And for me, when I reflected back, it was that the time that I spent as a younger boy, where I would get up at, say, 5 or 6 in the morning. Actually, it was 6 o'clock straight up. And my dad would come in and give us a little sign that it was time to wake up. And it was very subtle, a little click of his tongue. And then I'd get up and we would go and we'd meet in front of a bell, a large bell. And there was a form that each of us took in doing this practice of opening and closing the day. And that right effort that goes into actually going through the process and the movement of ringing that bell 8 times. And noticing that end result for me, when I really started to reflect on it, isn't where the right effort started. That right effort for me is all the way back when the idea came into like being talked about with my dad, saying, hey, would you be open to opening and closing the day by ringing a bell? There's not much more said in that, but for me, then that's when right effort kicked into place. The idea that right effort isn't the end result, but it's actually the journey in between of how you show up and prepare for the thing that you're actually going to be doing or accomplish. And so I started to reflect back on how when we would, when I'd first get out of bed, that I had a certain robe that I would put on, and that it was tied very intentionally. There were 2 ties that were tied, one on the inside and one at the top right corner. And that they were tied very neatly and precisely to the way that I would walk out and meet my dad at the door and stand in front of him face to face before we would bow to each other to acknowledge that we are starting this process together. And so that the practice that went into walking from my bedroom to meet my dad, the practice that went into, it's just not walking to meet my dad, that each step mattered. Each step had a purpose or an intention of being present. And so can you see back of that event that you brought in for yourself of right effort, the things that took place in between, that you brought your whole intention or self to? And so as I would move forward into learning how to bow properly, so that there was intention behind each movement that went into ringing a bell to open the day. And that right effort, in me reading about it and the definition of it, that there's a sense that you're not only having an intention to accomplish something or do something with an intention, that you're also, there's a process of working with not letting thoughts or old beliefs throw you off pattern or off track. And that being able to stay with an intention and a heartfelt sincerity, even though thoughts and patterns of maybe you shouldn't do this, why are we doing this, that things come in and question your right intention. So I bring to the group for right intention, for what is the right intention for you as you choose to create or do anything, and what would the impact be on your life showing up from that place of right intention. I'll start there. Thank you.
Wow. Okay, you've got a question out to you. How does right intention figure into your efforts to achieve something you've dedicated yourself towards as a worthwhile goal? Examples or thoughts on that question? Great question.
Thank you, Renee.
And a beautiful image that you created for us of you as a young boy rising, tying that robe on so precisely, and then walking with measured steps to the end of the hall, bowing to greet your father to ring that morning bell. Cliff.
I have a question. Is right, I think the first of the Eightfold Path is right purpose. Is that right?
Right view.
Right view. But I was wondering if like right view might be like right intention. But my main question is, with right intention, can there also be spontaneity in doing right effort? I mean, can you have both a focused intention, but also the freedom of spontaneity at the same time? Or would they complement each other?
Well, I definitely feel it is both. That the spontaneity, the ability to have a set target or goal that you're choosing to do, and then in the middle to listen to what is called for, knowing that you're constantly taking steps in the right effort and listening to what the spontaneity calls for in the moment. And Cliff, you gave an example that comes to me that you've modeled that for me is about when you were working with the project of the whales, and knowing that the intention was to hang the whales on the community center, that in the process of it, that there was the intuition of you knowing that they got to stand up and be fully displayed on their path to where they were going to be finally hung, and that you listened to that calling and stayed steadfast with it to make that happen. So to me, that's a great example of knowing it, but they're not laid flat. They're being shown the whole time.
Tony, the stage, the flip side is, or could be, the ability to assimilate your ongoing experience, not simply to experience it, but to try to make meaning out of it and to try to assimilate it and see broader connections to other people, broaden it out, but on the outside, but also kind of broaden it out on the inside. Could you say something about that in relation to right effort?
Yeah, definitely. So for me, the broadening of that, while I have an intention, that by having an intention set and fully knowing that I can see it and embody that vision, that the in-between to the path there is definitely broadened and widened, not only externally but also internally. So I think that would also tie to the listening and the intuition, to be able to really be aware externally and internally simultaneously. And a Hawaiian word that I've learned of hakalau is where you have right vision, and the vision is very broad and wide. And that, to me, that is like an essential part of right effort, is having that clarity externally and internally. Thanks for the question.
Eric, if you would, please.
Yes, thanks. So Tony, I'm not familiar very much with Zen Soto tradition, but I know in all forms of what are called Northern Buddhism, Mahayana or Vajrayana Buddhism, that this principle of right intention is connected up with altruism. The term they use is bodhicitta, which is that this not only, all one's efforts to live a spiritual life, to practice the Dharma and so on, but all aspects of one's life and all the fruits that may come from that are offered for the sake of all sentient beings, for that one is seeking enlightenment on behalf of those beings rather than on behalf of myself.
Mm-hmm.
The separative self. So in a sense, it's like assuming from the beginning a larger identity of who I am. But I'm again, I'm not familiar with the Zen tradition, so I don't know if that is considered part of the practice or part of the viewpoint they adopt.
So that I understand, well, I'm not understanding the question. Is that something they adopt, the broader view?
Well,
Is that what?
That concept of altruism as being connected with right intention. That is, that one's effort, whatever it is being made on behalf of others, of all sentient beings.
I would agree with that, yes.
So it is part of the Zen tradition then. It's something that's emphasized or not. Maybe.
How I experience it, yes. For myself, it's as for the greater good of all. Definitely.
So you mentioned, if I could just go add a question to that.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that as one cultivates this intention, and I really like the emphasis you put upon that, bringing one's entire self, one's entire awareness, focus, clarity, without anticipating the future, worried about the past, that one's bringing everything, all one's best nature to the task. But you also mentioned that in the process of doing that things come into question, that it's almost like there become natural blocks or challenges to that. And I wasn't certain exactly what you mean by that. Maybe an example would help if you had one in mind.
Yeah, I love this part for myself, being that primarily from athletics or in being an entrepreneur, and that by me feeling something inside my body of wanting to do something, and I'm going to use this talk as a direct example of that I declare it and own it to myself with my whole body. And that as I do that, then the thinking or the old beliefs of how or what I've learned from when I was a child will come in and what I would call like derail me or want to have me, for me, like not good enough, or do I have value, will come in and question what I'm doing towards something that I put my whole self forward to. Does that give an example of that for you?
Yeah. That resonates a lot. Because I think, you know, the whole issue of self-doubt and of thinking of oneself as being lesser or incapable or somehow not up to the task, that's very common, I think, for a lot of us. To get in the way of actually doing our best, you know, whatever that may be. You know. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and for me, the ability to recognize that when I fully choose something, again, with my whole body and not just my thinking, that I know that those beliefs or thoughts are going to be coming, and it tells me that I'm going the right direction. Very counterintuitive to what the thinking wants for that right effort. It wants me to slow it down, to stop, to put it aside. And can I continually, for me, either have support? No, I actually create support, and that I know that they're coming, and I'm going to choose to move forward anyways with that right effort and the voices or the doubt that may show up.
Anybody else have experience with that, and how do you deal? You've made your intention, you've got right effort.
I like how you said that, Tony, about, I usually say the awareness of the thoughts, like about being in present, like say with anxiety, especially being present and knowing I'm going to have anxiety, whether it's with public speaking or anything, but accepting them and welcoming, I guess, them to come, or however you worded that, was like, I liked that a whole lot better than just like having that awareness that, okay, you're going to have anxiety, or I don't know how I usually think of it. Or I try to switch it to more of like, I'm excited. Like I try to change the feel or how I'll feel. Like I know they're going to be present. Or even if I accept it in my whole body, the feelings or the change, the thoughts or anything, how you put it was so much better. I can't remember it now. It's a lot later here, so my mind is wearing down, but I did just like how you just put that into when the thinking mind comes up to disrupt what your body has already accepted. I like that better.
Yeah, it's a fun practice to play with, of, you know, that even in this moment, if like we're sitting here all together, and to say, what would be that thing that I've been leaning on the edge of, and, you know, it's really there for me to do this, and to like plan that there's going to be negative thoughts or negative beliefs that are going to come, and the excitement to actually say, I'm looking for them. I can't wait for them to come, because it's going to tell me I'm on the right track.
I like that. I like it. I like it a lot. I'm going to definitely note that down and use it.
Excellent.
Interpret.
Fun to play with.
Yeah, definitely.
I wonder.
Go ahead, please, Jim.
It just occurred to me for the first time, really, in terms of Buddhism and the Eightfold Noble Path. I recall that right effort is like the 6th out of the 8th, generally speaking, when they put it in sequential, which is just before you get to different versions of interpretation, but right concentration and then right meditation. Now, you'd think you begin with right view, sometimes some call also right intention, right faith. But the point is, if you begin initially, and then you go through this series of steps cascading to the point, but instead of things just flowing into concentration and then a person is able to experience some depth of profound meditation, they put in right effort. Why? Because I'm wondering, because even though one might do many things, you can't get to real altruistic concentration and a preparation for higher meditation unless there's been purification of the mind and the heart. So right effort becomes necessary because, as you say, you reach the point where just before concentration, you have to confront whether or not you have all the impurities taken care of and all the afflictions at some level.
Yes.
So therefore, effort is now needed because even though things might have gone relatively well, but you're now facing that difficult thing called complete focus, which is completely away from self, to preparation meditation, but it's not going to be possible unless there's been purification. So you've run across a block, and that block is a real test of motive. Is it really altruistic? Am I really being selfless? All of this becomes very interesting then, why you see why right effort is necessary. And it involves things like calmness and questioning and reflection and self-understanding, and then new resolve. So it's, to me, you made it very dynamic, and I hadn't thought of it that way before. So it all makes a kind of logic in terms of the spiritual.
I like it. I'm smiling, if you can't see me, from ear to ear of that, and I notice the right mindfulness myself and the right effort right before it. And to go into that like that is really, that I think there's no accidents with that, definitely. Really test it and the purity.
Yeah. Thank you.
Nice.
Doris, did you have a thought?
Aloha, Tony.
Aloha, Doris.
I was just thinking back to my childhood and what a different way you and I were woken up, I guess I used to really have a hard time getting up, but maybe I didn't have enough sleep. So my dad used to yell at me to get up in the morning, and just marveling at that one could wake up in such a peaceful, mindful manner, compared to the, shock to the system that I had, probably on school mornings. Well, I'm not sure if I'm on the right. Everybody seems to be talking about this right effort way up here. And I guess one of the things that struck me is just, as far as being a parent, how important it was for me to really always be that good example, and the one example that comes to mind was, my son hit puberty very late. So I remember we were at a museum in Los Angeles, and I guess the adult fare, the children's admission was, maybe 12 and under. And my son was 13, but he looked like he was 11 or 10, so we could have very well have gotten by with the child's admission. But both he and his cousin was a year older, and he had really not hit puberty either. So we could have passed both of them very easily, but I said, no, he's 13 and then that other kid is 14. So we'll pay the full price. And the museum people looked at me like I was crazy because, the two kids didn't look like they were, adults. But it was important for me because the sign said 12 and under, that, we were going to adhere to this, even if it cost me a little extra.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, when you're raising children and you want to do it right, these are the kinds of, decisions that you make. And I guess the other thing that it was very important to me was, I never promised him something I could not fulfill. And then even if it killed me, I was going to make sure that I followed through with whatever I said.
Yeah.
It's called moral integrity.
That's right.
That's a very wonderful quality, moral integrity.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim.
Doris, can I reflect something back that I heard in that around
Yes.
right effort?
Go
When we talk about, you know, having an intention, and what I hear, integrity of, you know, modeling for your kids what it is to do what is right, and that you knew it, you owned it, and at the same time, the voices or the thing that could say, hey, you can get away with this right now. It's okay if you don't hold right effort right now. You could probably get away with paying less, and you chose not to listen to what that was for that right effort. You chose to stay with the right effort no matter what this said. And so I acknowledge in right effort of not following what your thinking is saying, but what your whole self is, to modeling for your son and his friends at what it meant in being integrous. So I recognize that right effort.
I have a question kind of going towards the idea of over-striving. And both over-striving and under-striving, or like giving up. And I'm wondering where that comes from. I mean, I've experienced those.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if it, in both cases, you know, making too much effort, striving too hard, or
Mm-hmm.
falling back, both, even though they're opposites, maybe they still come from a fear of failure.
That lack of balance is perhaps because of not recognizing that growth is neither mechanical or can be forced. It has to unfold, and that's kind of unique to each person, the particular dynamics of what is too much and what is too little. It's just a recognition that you're working with laws, in a sense. You're working with the dynamics of growth and development and gaining knowledge and understanding. So you can have too much effort and too little effort, and that's why one has to have that vigilance and do a self-examination at night in order to refine things and fine-tune things, I would think. Sometimes a lot of effort is required in a situation. Even if you fail, you need to do it. Other times you need to back off and not strain so much.
I think in almost every case, except maybe like, you know, things that we do every day, like cooking a meal or, you know, a common workaday task of some sort. But especially in regards to the spiritual, if we think of it as being moral or spiritual, that we're very liable to do one or the other. That we can be pretty sure that, you know, almost every case we're not going to get it quite right. And so that, like Jim is saying, this self-reflection is needed, you know, where, you know, it's like a sailboat. Jim has given this example many times, you know, that you're constantly making adjustments as you're sailing, right? It's not like you put the rudder in one spot and you just go, you know, you're happy because there's tides, there's winds shifting, there's waves. So you have to be constantly on the alert and constantly making adjustments. And that seems to be, and corrections, the ability to self-correct. And sometimes it can take years, many years, to finally realize, wow, I was really overdoing it there. You know, I can back off and it'll be just fine. In fact, it might be better for other people if I do. You know, anyway, just a few thoughts.
I'm so proud of you. I was crying a lot of that time. It's very wonderful. It's the first time I've really heard Tony talk like this and at a talk. So I'm really, my heart is beaming. And I'd like to quote something that you say, Tony. When we talk about intention, it feels like a goal. And Tony's quote is, the goal is not where you go to, it's where you come from. And so if the intention is how I want to live my life, then I will keep that intention and then do deep listening so that each small step along the way is the right effort. And sometimes it is putting out a lot of effort, and sometimes it's backing off. It's like listening to, now it's time, I want to get there, but my intention is to do it, but I need to take care of myself, or I need to back off because I've been pushing too hard. Or I'm out, you know, I've forgotten the rest of my life and my family because I'm so focused. And so I think that that intention is where I come from inside my soul and body. And then I do deep listening to, and use meditation. For me, meditation is the center of the wheel of the Eightfold Path. It's from that the rest of it develops. And when I can really take that intention is how I want to live, and I can have a vision or a goal, but if I take the intention, I'm going to be guided for each baby step along the way of what I should do next. And it was a new thought for me that the goal is not where we're going to, but it was where we come from. And that's, Tony taught me that, and I'm very grateful.
Thank you.
I was kind of thinking along the same lines that when we are caught up in striving too hard or just don't try at all, we are very focused on ends or goals and not so much on the process or the means, which is the more organic part of it. If you can trust that, you know, growth will happen or improvement will happen, then you can focus more in the moment and not so much projecting into the future, and you're very present at all times, which is paying more attention to where you're coming from than where you're going in some sense. It's where you are at that particular moment in time. I was thinking of Emerson, who spoke so much about self-reliance. And I think that idea of self-trusting or self-reliance has a lot to do with this overcoming this fear of failure that maybe makes you try to strive too hard or not strive at all.
As I'm hearing everybody speak about the right intention and overdoing it or underdoing it, I was going to where do I not put like I judge that I don't put right effort into. I take it for granted of the actual action that I'm doing. And so in posing that question of like, where in your life are you on autopilot? You know, where do you show up from that place of, oh, this is how it normally goes and I can just get through it? So as you sit with that question, then I'm gonna, for myself, the idea of driving, and that driving for, you know, for decades or more, that taking the actual experience of moving through space and time at a speed and being in like right effort with it, I can really take that for granted and be at the end result and not present in the actual experience. And so that, you know, the influence on my life by having right effort when I drive and when I bring that kind of awareness to everything that I do, that I do a lot of unconscious effort versus right effort. So maybe there's something there for a comment or reflection.
Yeah, just a couple thoughts. In terms of the overstriving and understriving, it's kind of good to do a gut check with the heart, because I think the heart might really tell us something, that the mind is going off with this instrumental action to accomplish this, that, which it may have to do. But I think the heart is important because it gets to the sense of identity. And a lot of times we base our personal identity on overstriving, or for that matter, understriving and being a victim. So I just wanted to point out that it has a lot to do with how we see ourselves, our identity. And if we can go to our heart or go to a transcendent source of some kind, take a time out, we can make that recalibration and in that sense. And I guess now to the question about I've driven all my life because I've lived in LA. So I've thought a lot about conscious and unconscious driving. And um, I think that you can, I think, mix the two in this sense that once you develop a good habit, it sort of doesn't have to be so conscious as because it becomes reliable. So there are good habits. There's no. On the other hand, though, you have to also be alert enough to be conscious. So again, when driving, I can be on autopilot because I've driven a whole lot, and I'm not a bad driver, at least. But boy, you have to be you also have to be prepared to be real conscious the minute someone cuts in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a balance between the two. But good habits are important.
Sure. I may be approaching this more from an intellectual standpoint. My lens has been the Eightfold Path from yoga, and this is a slight different lens by which to look at this. So it seems like there's a lot of overlap between this, the second of right thoughts, right livelihood, right action, and this right effort idea. So I think something Cliff said reminded me. I'm thinking about maybe, and you can just verify, if I'm putting my oar in the water, there is a certain amount of effort that is optimal for moving me forward. Less or more doesn't get me further along, as well as the precision of being right at that right amount of effort, I guess it is, that you can feel you and the boat and the water have all come together to create this forward motion. And I'm guessing that's the notion of right effort. The intention is to keep the boat upright and to make it downstream without crashing into rocks. And the effort is the amount of attention. It also relates to, it seems like these all weave together.
Yes.
So if you have something that can bring me more clarity on that, I'd appreciate it.
The image that I get of the wheel of the Eightfold Path, and as my mom was talking, how it all goes together in the middle and the hub of that, that they all are all interconnected and they're all simultaneously in relationship with each other. Yeah. And as I hear you talk about the oar going in, and for me that there is a visceral sensation when that stroke or when effort is at its wholeness or at its that right effort, that my whole body actually feels a gaucho or a bow is very different than doing a bow and having it be just a movement. And so when the oar is in and it's synced. I'm not a rower, and being a martial artist, I know that sensation of the whole body, the thinking, the heart, and the gut is all working together, and there's an effortless feel to it, but yet super ultra present. There's I know there's present or not, and it's like that, where I can sense everything around me, just in feeling a stroke of the water drops coming off the paddle, and it's like that super hyper vigilance, to being the center of the spoke, being all of those working together simultaneously.
Yes, a lot. And I had the Eightfold Path up, and I just discovered that the word sama means something like where we get the word summit from. So it's this notion of right, that there's a correctness to it.
To me, what makes all this even more kind of fascinating and complex is when we go back to what is the Noble Eightfold Path about? It's about the path to compassionate enlightenment, which means then when we're thinking of things like effort, excessive effort, too little effort, but now compounded, because we have to think of it this way too, from the standpoint of the Buddha and the Buddhist teaching. The concern is with the welfare of all other sentient beings, all other human beings. Well, when you're dealing with a child, as Doris was mentioning, or children, and it takes effort to do what is right by the child on different kinds of occasions. And sometimes those occasions require tremendous effort. At other times, we have to discipline ourselves to not do too much, to leave the opportunity for the child to make discoveries, to learn, to become self-propelling, so to speak. So the amount of awareness we have to have of other people with whom we interact on some kind of regular basis in terms of their needs, their tendencies, and what it is important to them, we can still have our altruistic desires, which we need to encourage, but the dynamics of balancing and too little, too much, to say too little, say too much, all of this makes it really fascinating. And it makes it a very dynamic as well. It just seems to me that's what's the Buddhist idea of always drawing a larger circle means that life becomes richer and you have a lot of knowledge that you gain from doing that.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And with children, it's very much the, I'm in that, it is a relationship is how I put it. And
yeah. Relationships. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So relationship with that Eightfold Path, relationship with the hub, and me stepping in and out of over effort, under effort, and noticing. I think one of the key ones for me is taking the time to notice when I am in right effort. That a lot of the times I'll focus on over effort or under effort and not right effort.
Oh.
And the willingness. I think you were speaking about reflection at the end of the day. And for me, like gratitude reflection is being in right effort of gratitude of those things that were in my day that, man, I just blow right past them. And I'll tell you everything that went wrong with my day. That's the first thing, instead of bringing gratitude right to the forefront. And for me, gratitude exemplifies right effort.
That's beautiful. I love that. I think that's marvelous. Gratitude. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think for me, I want to move. I've been working on the difference between right effort does not mean it's right and wrong. There's not this is wrong and this is right. What I'm working at, looking at myself, is that whatever happens is exactly what needs to happen, and having compassion and love and gratitude for whatever. Sometimes I put in too much effort. Sometimes I do it wrong. Sometimes I try to be too controlling, even with my kids in their 50s, but it's like, sometimes it's like, I realize that I may not understand if I say something that maybe that's exactly what they needed to hear. I don't know. Sometimes it comes out of my mouth and I'm just thinking, why did I say that? And then I've been told, well, that's, I really needed to hear that. So I'm trying to have, and I'm not trying, I'm working and being more compassionate with myself in trusting divine wisdom, that each moment is actually as it should be. If I'm living in this only moment, then it's exactly as it should be. If I find that I need to apologize or I made a mistake, that's part of my process and part of my relationship, not only with my children, but with my bigger scope. And as I learn from myself, because in my belief we are all one, and as I learn from myself that we are all one, then the changes and work that I do on living right effort affects everybody. That the decisions I make aren't just for me, they are for everybody. But that's where I need to have compassion and not own that, oh my God, I made a horrible mistake. If I did, I apologize and work on it. But then I have compassion for myself that perhaps that was exactly the lesson I needed, or exactly what I needed to do at that time for myself, the world, and whoever I'm interacting with.
I was thinking too along those lines that maybe right effort isn't about like being perfect or getting it just right. But it's more the idea of perfectibility rather than perfection.
Yeah.
And going back to David's analogy of paddling, I've done plenty of paddling, probably millions of paddle strokes, I imagine. And it's like the simplest thing ever to paddle. Just so simple. But every time you do it, you're striving for that perfect or that perfectible paddle where everything is just right every single time you do it. And every once in a while, you feel like it all clicked. You may go out and paddle for 10 miles, but in that paddling of 10 miles, you may have had 2 strokes of the thousands that were just right. And they feel so good that it was worth the 10 miles of paddling just for those 2 strokes. And I think that's true in everything we do, that we, every once in a while, we ring the bell, you know, and it's just that moment where we said the right thing in the right way to the right person, and everything just fit. And those are the little joys by striving for right effort and right intention that we get to relish every once in a while.
Does right effort also mean you have to be detached about the effects of your effort?
Or you're not going to get that moment if you're not detached.
Okay.
Doris?
Oh, just a quick ad. On social media the other day, I just read something about reframing, with, you know, to not say, why is this happening to me, but to instead say, why is this happening for me? And that was very kind of mind-blowing to me, because it's so easy to sort of fall into that kind of victimhood, but to just try to find a more positive spin on it, and then to try to see it a challenge as, you know, just reframing in just changing that one preposition can change your whole outlook on a situation. So I just wanted to share that.
I wanted to share that, well, the Eightfold Path was done for common man because we're all not going to be bodhisattvas. So it was an easy path to follow in Buddhism for most people. The Mahayana was formed for that. But I was during the whole talk, I was thinking about like right action, right effort. And I thought about the time that we're in, the COVID, and about wearing masks. So it's very controversial. And I guess I came back from Thailand in February. So, you know, it had hit Thailand more than USA. And USA is like not thinking anything's going to happen to us. But everyone in Thailand was wearing masks. Almost 80, I would say 85 to 90% of the people wear masks. And to me, that's like right effort. I don't want, in case I, you know, get contained with it, to pass it on to anybody, and I don't want to receive it from anyone else. So my right effort would be to wear a mask. And it's when you, every morning when I like working in my garden, I see people and they're like all older and they're not wearing masks, and it's unsafe. And then I thought of Doris, what she said about children, and I thought, people with children, you want to teach them when they're young that there's certain rules and we want to follow it. And if you don't teach them that, they're going to be, have total disregard for any, you know, rule following or things that is right or right effort and intent. So parents who walk with children that don't wear masks, they're teaching them that you don't have to follow any rules. You can do as you want. And so I was thinking about Doris, about what she did with her sons, and that's an important lesson, because it's, you want to teach them that in life they're going to go. If you don't teach them that from when they're young, as they get older, they'll step beyond the line of what is right and wrong, or what is right effort, or what is right, you know, the right thing to do, and they will pass it further and further, because to them it makes no difference. Yeah. So I, for myself, like I try to wear it, and yes, it's difficult to breathe, but it hopefully that in case if I have something, I don't pass it to anyone, and I don't get it from anyone else either.
That's really helpful too, because we need to keep in mind that the Eightfold Path uses the word right with everything, including right action, right speech, right profession. There have to be distinctions between right and wrong at some level. Because otherwise it becomes mindless. And that's not at all what the Buddhist is talking about. They're very vigilant about mind states. And it is important. They do have rules, and the monasteries, very strict rules about the kind of speech that's acceptable, or the kinds of actions that should be promoted and those that should not. So these matter in terms of our of our overall spiritual, mental, ethical, physical well-being.
Yeah, thank you.
From what Sharon was saying, it sounds as though right effort has to do with thinking bigger and a little bigger and a little bigger, not just how is it going to affect me, these efforts that I'm making or I don't make, but how could it affect the people close to me and then rippling out to larger and larger circles. And it sounded that way also when Diana was speaking, and she was speaking about right effort for herself, actually is speaking of effort on behalf of the greater self of all, of the whole. There's just no distinction. Mary, did you have a thought?
Thinking of Tony's upbringing, I applaud his parents, bless them. They did a remarkable job. Our children, when we are trying to guide them along the path that we plan for them, if we don't do it, they're going to listen to somebody else. We have only ourselves to blame. As a young parent and trying to keep a job, have a place to live, making sure your kids are fed, making sure they're going to school, taking care of their physical needs and everything, it's daunting. It's just amazingly hard. It wasn't until I was much older that I was able to have time to myself. And I think if I had known then what I know now, I would have tried to have, even if it's just 5 minutes for everybody, when you get together, just everybody just sit down and just veg for a minute or 5 minutes. Because then we got to get up and get dinner. We've got to take our baths. We've got to do our homework. We've got to get everything done. It's okay. You know, we're given what we're given and we deal with it as best we can. I try not to have any regrets. Every opportunity is a challenge and we dive in head first. What else are we going to do? We can't go feet first. There are different ways to dive in, but you know, choices that we make, we deal with the consequences. But I don't ascribe to blaming ourselves or spending too much time regretting what we did. So sorry. Amen.
Amen.
Sandra, I wanted to allow you to weigh in if you felt like it, maybe as a mom of 2 boys, or maybe as a wonderful thinker and heart person.
Oh, it's a lot to think about. I mean, a lot of a lot of these concepts are just things I'm thinking about, and as I reflect on my life and path and future, and so I appreciate the discussion. I don't know. I just, as a parent, I mean, yeah, it's it's hard. There's a lot of influences, not just what kids get at home, and so it's yeah. I wish I had brought in a little more intention and those types of rituals into my bringing up my kids, but again, at the time we're just scrambling and working really hard and that kind of thing. So I would be curious, Tony, as you described how you were woken up in the morning and that ritual, how that has carried over into your current life. Do you have rituals now, and how have you passed on these types of rituals to your children?
So yes, they have carried on. I get a smile when I go to my sons to wake up and either do an activity or have structure in the morning. And I think for me, that structure and regularity of the same thing over and over again is how I've really brought in that structure. So creating the event and practicing regularly at it.
Mhm.
And don't you have a morning practice of your own?
Yeah, so for myself, I start my morning by myself to get that in that alignment with the Eightfold Path through meditation and yoga. And I'll start that at 4 and then wake the boys up at 6 a.m. and start a run and a swim and that sort of thing.
Wow.
So being, right now, being in relationship with them and having ways that I can model right effort and showing up fully on a regular basis with them is like, that's my mission and job right now. So I feel really honored to be carrying on that tradition forward, And in coming, noticing we're coming to or at the top of the hour, we go to the top, right, Renee?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to, with all the noise and energy that is going on in the world, that I would love this group and invite you to tonight to look at your day of how you showed up in right effort, and can you notice 3 of them and celebrate them to yourself. One way I put it is gratitude and seeing where that is, and to recognize those and say, that good job to me that I showed up that way, will actually bring that more into your consciousness and more into your day if with a regular recognition of right effort. So thank you.
I want to thank Tony on behalf of all of us for giving us not only a great deal of insight coming from a long spiritual practice from childhood, also giving us some really practical tips for leading our everyday lives in a way that is going to feel more meaningful, more balanced, more reviewed, so that we can self-correct, and also much more a matter of living according to the heart, living our best, so that we're showing up through this steady effort the way that our initial goal was, as Tony's mom brought out. You start from the goal. that intention, right at that seed intention, if it's a high and lofty and really heartfelt one, is what really we grow on and we carry through, and it's the same seed that then blossoms and drops its next seed for the rest of it. So thank you, Tony, and to everyone else for participating. Thank you ever so much, all. Thank you, Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you, Tony.
Mahalo. Love you all.
Thank you, Tony. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Tony.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Aloha.
Aloha
Thank
nui loa,
you.
Tony. Aloha.